order. We'll go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. We're going to go ahead and start off with the open forum. Hello, Steve.
Hello.
Okay, thank you. In addition to public comment on agenda items, the Commission offers an open forum whereby citizens may comment on governance issues over which the City of Nacogdoches has domain. In accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, members of the Commission shall not discuss, deliberate, or make any decisions on topics not posted as an agenda item. Speakers should address all remarks to the Commission and limit your remarks to no more than 3 minutes. Does anybody have any open forum comments, questions? Okay. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We are going to start with approval of minutes, so if you guys have time to read through that. If anybody feels free to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the notes as written.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. All right, motion passes and carries. All right, we're going to move on to the regular agenda.
All right, Chairwoman, I just need you to read the agenda caption
Sure.
and then we'll get started.
So for 5B, or actually, let's go into 5A actually.
Well,
5A,
it is 5B.
5B,
Mhm.
okay. All right. We are in 5B, consider approval of preliminary plan for the Park Ridge and Park Reserve subdivisions consisting of approximately 64 acres located at the eastern terminus of Park Street. This request has been submitted by JBSC Development.
All right, thank you, Chairwoman, Elena Helton, City Planner. And just for the record, there was an error in the staff report for this item. The staff report says that the preliminary plan includes 138 lots. It's actually 176 lots. So just wanted to provide clarity for that. All right, so the, hold on one second. This looks a little bit different than my plans, but we will work with it. All right, so the proposed preliminary plan includes the extension of Park Street, 2 single-family subdivisions, Park Ridge and Park Reserve, with a total of 176 lots in private open space. The development will be built in 3 phases. Phase 1 will include the extension of the first portion of Park Street, the stormwater detention facility, and 41 single-family homes within the Park Ridge subdivision. Phase 2 will include the remaining portion of Park Street and all 47 single-family lots of the Park Reserve subdivision. And Phase 3 will include the remaining 88 lots of the Park Ridge subdivision and a private park. The plan does require variances to the subdivision ordinance, Section 90-216 and Section 90-181. So the property is zoned R1 single family. It's located on the eastern boundary of the city limits at the terminus of Park Street. The plan does meet the standards for the lot size and layout for the R1 zoning district, with the exception of the variances that are being requested. However, the stormwater detention facility is currently shown in the area that is zoned PD planned development. The PD was established for single-family residential uses. However, it's expired due to development inactivity. So we are proposing that condition. We would like to see that zone change approved before the first final plat is submitted for the subdivision. All right, so for the variances, a block length is a measurement of the linear distance of land along a block face that's bounded on the end by two streets. The subdivision ordinance says that for residential areas, the block length shall not exceed 1,200 feet or be less than 600 feet. The other variances that are being requested are regarding street projections. The ordinance says where adjoining streets or where adjoining areas are not subdivided, the arrangements of streets within the subdivision shall make provisions for the proper projection into those properties. And so the first variance we're going to look at is for a block length for Jacqueline Street. Staff finds that this variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right of the applicant. Introducing a connecting street in the middle of this block would actually, the depth between the parallel streets, Rhonda and Jacqueline Street, does not provide sufficient space to allow lots to front it, which would result in this connection acting more like an alleyway than a street. In addition, the block length is within 225 feet, which is 18% of the required 1,200-foot block length. So the strict application of this section could deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the land by requiring the introduction of a street within this block. All right, the second variance is, again, for block length, but it's along Rhonda Street. Staff finds that this variance is necessary, again, for the preservation and enjoyment of the substantial property right, given that the applicant's intent is to create a private park to the north, just behind the lots, facing this section of Rhonda Street, and introducing a new street within this block would likely conflict with a private park for the development. Additionally, the block is within 75 feet or 6% of the requirement, and so strict application of the section could deprive the applicant of reasonable use of the land by requiring the introduction, again, of a street within the block. All right, the third and fourth variances are for street projection. Staff finds that there are special circumstances or conditions affecting the land involved, especially to the north. This area is restricted due to topography and private utilities, and the land is largely undevelopable. And Park Street will serve as a single crossing point to limit disturbance of this natural buffer, and the future developments will then spur off of Park Street. The fourth variance is for street projections to the south. A portion of the properties to the south are part of, again, that expired plan development and is undeveloped. The remaining properties are located outside the city limits and are developed with residential uses. Street projections for the tracts located outside the city may not be extended in the future given to the existing development that's already on the property. However, street projections to the tracts could be provided if the PD is updated with a new development plan or if it's rezoned to a similar use. Also, future access to State Highway 7, which is located south of this property, is possible through a connection to an existing county road, CR 221, via a 50-foot wide reserve that's shown in Phase 1. So if that area is ever annexed and developed with a similar use, then the plan is to project into that street, but right now it's outside the city, so there's no development controls for that area. All right, so the conditions for approval of a variance are listed on your screen. The ordinance says that staff shall consider all of these criteria whenever reviewing these types of applications. Staff does recommend approval, again, with the condition that the area depicted as a stormwater detention facility be rezoned from PD to R1 single family prior to completion and approval of Phase 1. To approve the plan, the variances must also be approved. If any of the variants are denied, the plan must also be denied. The applicant and property owner is also in attendance if the commission should have any questions. And that concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Elena.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
Can you put a figure up that shows that 50-foot not variance, but I guess it's an easement that would be available for future through traffic if?
Yes, I had another version of the PowerPoint that showed that, so there must have been some confusion when uploading the proper presentation. But if you look in Phase 1, that's the area outlined in red. On the very western boundary that backs up to Village Gate, there's a break in between the lots where they're showing a 50-foot reserve area, and so it's wide enough to provide a future street. So it's midway along that area that's outlined in red along the western boundary.
So basically, once you enter this subdivision, you're not getting out unless you backtrack.
Yes, ma'am.
And you said something in your write-up about the fire and police personnel have looked at this and they, I guess, signed off on it, or they don't have any issues with
Yes,
access?
they found that the access, based on the number of lots, meets the fire code for this type of land use. And so, and that they don't find that it would negatively impact response time or anything of that nature. Oh, and this plan is also consistent with the economic development agreement that City Council approved last year for this property.
Okay.
So Park Street does go through the middle of it.
Yes, ma'am. And so Phase 1 will include that first section of Park Street, and then Phase 2 will be the remainder. And so that cuts the property essentially in half, north and south.
We also have the applicant here and the engineer that can speak to it as well, Commissioner Forbes. Does anybody else have any other questions right now?
Just one more. What is the downside of not having a through street for that big section in the middle? Are there downsides that you are aware of?
It does limit connectivity within and outside the subdivision, and could long-term impact traffic volumes with concentrating additional traffic on major arterials instead of providing additional outlets. So there is that possibility that the lack of connectivity to and outside of the subdivision could affect future traffic patterns.
I'm the only one with questions?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you. Would the applicant like to come and speak? Okay. Do you want to ask the engineer questions at all?
No, not about the,
Okay. Is there any public comment on this? Okay, please come up to the stand, sir. You'll have to actually come up to here and then state your name and your address.
Name is Willie C. Richardson.
Hello, Ms.
And
Richardson.
trying to get the direction of Park Street. You're talking about
Sure, can you state your address first?
2212 John Richardson Road.
Okay. And your
Okay.
question, sir?
Park Street, y'all talking about across Starling Drive?
Yes.
Yes.
Understanding. I know they're developing in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it dead end
Correct.
and houses in that.
To the
area. So they're trying
subdivision.
to build a park and all that stuff in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And onto most streets or something?
Well, this is for the development of an extension past that subdivision. The agricultural land was rezoned so that it could actually be for single-family homes.
Okay. Cool. I know where you're at now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, now it's time for our discussion. All right, Commissioner Forbes, concerns in terms of not having a thoroughfare pass through, in terms of the amount of residential homes and cars to each home, do you foresee that to be an issue?
I guess it would concern me if I was gonna buy one of these homes, but I'm not, so I guess, I don't know, it just seems, you know how you get lost in a neighborhood and you're like, oh, I know I can get through right here, and then you end up having to turn around. It's kind of confusing, but I guess there must be some trade-off, there must be some benefit to doing it, so.
I would think if I owned a home in that subdivision, I would be happy that there isn't going to be a lot of traffic down there, to be honest with
Yeah,
you.
I mean, that's true also. I'm just curious because the only neighborhood I know like this is south of the Loop in the Southwest Ward. It's the one that just got cut off from from the fire station, number
Oh,
3.
yeah.
It's oak this and oak that. That one's very also contained.
Mhm.
There's only 1 or 2 ways out of there, and then, yeah. I mean, I don't have an issue with it. I'm just wondering, what that downside might be.
Well, I do see some upsides to this, which, we had asked them to put some sidewalks in on their behalf.
Yes.
And also to make it into a development area where there's actually enjoyable features like a park. And there's a private park that they're actually thinking about putting in, which is great. I do have a question about how large that park is. And also if these extended lots,
The park is 3 acres.
3 acres, okay.
Yeah,
And it's private,
And it'll be privately
Correct.
Owned and maintained.
right? It does state that it's a private park, which is really nice.
Very nice.
On this, extending the variances for the large lots, I'm assuming that this would actually be cost-effective for the builder as well.
Yeah, so the economic development agreement actually showed 138 lots. And so these lots are a little bit smaller than what was originally proposed. And so in essence, there's, the trade-off is additional open space, to compensate for the higher density. But this could also improve the affordability of these homes as well.
Okay? Each lot size is 8,250 square feet
At least. Yes, ma'am.
at the very minimum. Okay? And what is our usual for that lot size for R1?
It's 8,250 square feet. Sometimes we'll see corner lots that are a little bit bigger because the setbacks are larger. But on average, they're about 9,000 square feet
Okay.
typically.
And our ordinance is at what, Elena, do you know, for R1, for lot size?
It's
It's
8,000.
8,002, okay, just making sure, clarifying, thank you. Okay. Does anybody else have any discussion on it? Would anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept it as platted, I suppose is the motion, right?
Sorry, we'll wait till the phone gets silenced. Okay. Commissioner Carroll made a motion to accept it. Does anybody second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, now moving on to Agenda 5C. Consider a zone change for Lot 3, City Block 54, from B2 General Business to R3 Two-Family District, and a zone change request for Lot 3C, City Block 54, from A Agriculture to R3 Two-Family District, located at 2603 John Richardson Road. This request has been submitted by Brian Moore, case file ZON 202303. That was a mouthful.
Thank you, Chairwoman. As stated, the request is for a zone change for 2 adjoining lots, Lot 3 and Lot 3C, to R3, two-family, in order to make the zoning more consistent with the adjacent zoning. And the R3 district is intended for single-family and two-family residential uses. Okay, so again, the zone change for Lot 3 is from B2 General Business to R3 Two-Family for approximately 8 acres. And the zone change for Lot 3C is for the adjoining tract, which is approximately 1 acre. And the request is from A Agriculture to R3 Two-Family. The agricultural district has a minimum lot size of 2 acres. And so the current lot size of 1 acre doesn't meet the minimum requirements for the zoning district it's located in. This is a sparsely populated area with limited development, with the exception of a few single-family and mobile home residences in the area. The properties within the immediate vicinity are primarily undeveloped and they're zoned ag, with some single-family residential uses located to the west along the north section of John Richardson Road. Lot 3 is currently undeveloped with Lot 3 is currently developed with a single-family residence and a mobile home. It's zone B2. Staff finds that the request to R3 Two-Family is much more appropriate for the area and consistent with the existing zoning. Lot 3C is undeveloped, and the applicant has stated that they intend to build a single-family residence on the property. The agricultural district, again, has a larger lot size, and the current size is not compliant with the zoning district. And staff finds that this lot, This request is also consistent with the existing zoning. We did talk about changing the zoning to a single family, like a R1 or a R2, but we were afraid that would constitute spot zoning because there's no other zoning like that in the area. But you do have the option to make a recommendation with approval of a more restrictive zoning district. So your recommendation could be zone change to R1 or R2 because we advertised for the higher density zone change. So there's something to keep in mind as we're going through this process. The future land use plan does call this area out as rural, which makes sense, again, because it's sparsely populated. It doesn't have as much infrastructure as other areas in town, and so this rural designation makes sense. The request does fit into the goals of the comprehensive plan as far as avoiding undesirable development outcomes by ensuring that development is compatible with adjacent land uses and zoning and so on and so forth. And so we find that the request does make the property more compatible with the other properties of the area than the existing zoning today. These are photos of Lot 3. That's the area that's currently zoned B2 general business. You see there's a single-family home and a mobile home located on the property. This is Lot 3C. It's currently undeveloped and wooded. This is where they plan to develop the single-family residence. This is the section of John Richardson Road that the property fronts on. It'll take direct access to this road, and other single-family residential uses also take direct access to this road. This is an older, more narrow road than typical residential streets with a 40-foot right-of-way and a pavement width of 16 feet. And so due to the current configuration of the street, any new development would be limited to low-density residential uses unless the street is improved to increase the current capacity. So the nature and condition of the street in itself will limit future development in the area unless it's improved and widened. These are images of the other residential uses in the area, just to give you an idea of the character of the development along John Richardson Street. This is the 200-foot buffer, and so you can see the majority of the uses that are surrounding the property are agricultural, they're undeveloped, and then the other residential uses are owner-occupied. As part of this process, we sent out 5 letters to property owners within the 200 feet, and we received 1 letter of response in support of the request. And for the 500-foot buffer, we sent out 4 notices and we received 1 contact in support of that request as well. The conditions for approval are outlined on your screen, and we went over those in more detail in the staff report, so I won't go over them here, but just wanted to have them available if you guys want to get into the weeds of some of those. And so staff does recommend approval. Now, as far as the action options that the P&Z has at their disposal, you can approve the request as presented. You can approve it with conditions, you can deny it, or you can approve for a more restrictive zoning district like R1 or R2. And the property owner and applicant is also in attendance if you have any questions for Mr. Moore.
Elena? Anybody have questions for Elena?
I have some questions about just general curiosity, but this, I don't understand all this B2 zoning. I see something that might be in business down in the lower corner here, but there's, appears to be an entire subdivision that's in B2. Is that like in the days when you just did whatever you wanted regardless of the zoning, or?
Yes, ma'am. The property to the south, one of those parcels is actually the Michael McMoses Middle School, and adjacent to that is a affordable housing development
Yes.
owned by our local housing authority.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure the timing of whenever that was constructed, but at the time, perhaps it was compliant with the zoning ordinance whenever it was done.
So would that be R4 or R3 there, that subdivision, that,
It would be
what
single
would it
family.
fit? That subdivision would be R1 or R2?
Well, it wouldn't, it'll probably be R2 or
Okay.
more than likely a planned development, because those are smaller lots. And so most likely, based on the lot size, it would have to be a planned development or R4.
And you may not know the answer to this, but how did the R3 get stuck in the middle of ag and B2?
That's interesting. So we found back in 2003 that the property immediately to the west was changed and received a specific use permit for a manufactured home. And so
Okay.
it was actually also zoned B2, commercial,
Okay.
and then was subsequently changed for the placement of a mobile home on that property. And we weren't able to identify why the request for B2 was done, but it was actually done prior to that. So it goes back quite a ways.
Okay. And does R3 permit manufactured homes?
No, but we do allow manufactured homes or mobile homes in approved specific use permits, in approved mobile home parks. And where you have grandfathered mobile homes, you're allowed to replace those
Right.
one for one for a newer version. And there are several areas in town that received specific use permits for mobile homes when our ordinance allowed for that. And so those would be protected.
And the applicant, your intention is to build a single-family home, or can you talk about that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thanks.
Can you state my name and address?
Yes,
as well?
state, yes, sir.
Brian Moore, 2517 John Richardson Road.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hi,
How are you?
good, how are y'all?
Okay, so you live in the front.
All right, Commissioner Forbes, what was your question?
Well, it stated in the package that the applicant was intending to build a single-family residence, is that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you're gonna do that instead of the mobile home, or in addition to, or?
In addition to, I was gonna build, where, I can't, what is it, B2 now?
For business two, the pink zones?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, purplish zones, yeah.
So if this B2 is rezoned to R2, he wouldn't be able to do that because of the existing mobile home?
Yeah, so the existing mobile homes are grandfathered, and the applicant, it's the green piece that's currently zoned ag, that's undeveloped, is where he plans to build a new single-family
Okay.
residence.
And it's a separate lot?
Yes, ma'am.
So if it's R2, he could do it as well?
Yes, ma'am. Mhm.
Yeah. So is there any reason that you're applying for R3 instead of R2?
Because of spot zoning.
Oh, because you didn't want to?
Correction, because there wasn't any R2 or R1 in the area, and so we were afraid that would constitute spot zoning, because it's different than any other zoning in the area. But based on the adjacent land uses and character, it wouldn't necessarily be detrimental or negatively impact the adjacent properties. So that was on the direction of staff, based on what's there right now, as far as the existing zoning of the adjacent properties of R3.
Okay,
So properties to the north and west are also in a family trust that's owned by the applicant's relatives and are also zoned R3.
I mean, R2 makes a lot more sense to me than R3, and I don't know how that got to be R3 to begin with. I don't see any structures on that.
Yeah.
And there's not, I guess there's some, is there even road access to those?
there's a John Richardson Road right there.
Right, but I mean the ones behind it.
Oh,
Yes, so John Richardson, it turns and goes north, and so those lots do have street frontage.
So do you feel like you could do what you need to do if it was R2?
Yes, ma'am.
And the setbacks won't create a problem
No.
there?
Does the city plan to widen and pave that road?
I don't know of any immediate future plans to do so, no, ma'am.
okay.
Because that's
No,
that's
that's
one
a
of
no
my
for-
concerns too,
Yeah.
to zone it R3 and then to have that road there, that's
Yeah.
kind of like, and I always think of spot zoning as taking an R1 and sticking an R4 in the middle of it, not the other way around, but you know.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's
Yeah, it can be
Okay.
anything,
That
Commissioner
doesn't fit.
Forbes, yeah, that doesn't fit around it.
okay.
Are there any other questions for the applicant?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other questions for Elena? Okay. Well, like she said, she'll go over it again. We can approve or approve with conditions, deny it, or approve for more restrictive zoning, like Commissioner Forbes has suggested. But is there anybody else that would like to speak publicly about this matter? Nobody else? Okay. Well, discussions on our plates now. Just like you had said, Commissioner Forbes, about the road access, they are not probably going to widen those streets anytime soon.
If you've ever driven out there, the topography is pretty steep. The elevation of the actual properties is above the
Right.
elevation of the roadways. And so it would be very difficult and expensive to expand that roadway. And so more than likely, the development pattern will continue to be low-density, single-family, regardless of the zoning, just because of the nature of the roadway. But staff finds that R1 and R2 would also be adjacent with the kind of existing development pattern in the area. We're only recommending R3 because it was also allowed for single-family and would match the other zoning of the adjacent properties.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any concerns?
It seems like with all of the rest of it being R3, that makes the most sense,
Yeah,
you know, rather than introducing another block in there that doesn't match.
I understand that. To me, the fact that any of it's R3 doesn't make sense.
Well,
And
maybe
so-
not, but it is. It
Yeah.
is what it
but
is,
It's
so,
kind of
you
like,
know.
well, this is all wrong, so let's do this one wrong as well, and
Ela-
that's how I think of it.
understood too. Elena, is there any, what's the process for planning and zoning to do a sweeping change? Let's just evaluate currently right now that R3 is completely inappropriate for this region of the city. If we wanted to actually rezone that into something else, what would that process look like?
So we could do a city-initiated zone change based on direction from the Planning and Zoning Commission. The first step would be to hold a neighborhood meeting and invite all those property owners to come and just talk through that process and what it would look like. And depending on the feedback, that would kind of direct staff on how we want to move forward. But again, that process could be initiated by staff. We've done that before. But we like to be very collaborative when we're doing that. So we want the property owners involved and make sure that they're on board
Absolutely.
with the request.
Okay, let's just, I'm
Did you
sorry.
say that Mr. Moore and his family own that property just to the north, the R3 also?
Yes, ma'am. It's in a family trust, and so it's him and several other relatives that are party to that trust.
And how would y'all feel about changing all of it from R3 to R2? It's single family. It's duplexes, so you could have a duplex.
Now,
You don't want duplexes.
yeah, they do,
R2 is not duplex.
She said R3.
Let Elena speak for
Yeah.
this, because we don't have everybody involved in it, it's just the Moore family, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Richardson, okay.
so the R3 two-family district, which is all that area shown in brown, that area allows for single-family and duplex development. R1 and R2 only allow for single-family, but the current lot sizes would meet the district development standards for that district. So they wouldn't have to seek additional variances for lot size or anything like that.
So we could just change all of it to R2 or R1.
Potentially, I'm not sure if they own the property immediately to the west. That might be owned separately, but the remaining portion, the area you see highlighted in yellow, and the lots immediately to the north that are brown, all of that is owned by the family. And that's a discussion that we can have with them.
Right. At a later time, too. So,
Well, like what happened in my neighborhood is a lot across the street was rezoned to R4 and sold, and now they're not duplexes, but they're homes that are really close together. A bunch of homes are being built right there. So that's what can happen if, and you own that property now, but someday you may not, and you may have built your dream home, and then all of a sudden you've got a bunch of high density coming in next door to you, and that may not be what you want, and that's the only reason to consider that. Okay,
all right.
well, I make a motion, I will make a
Hold on,
motion.
I'm gonna have a comment.
Sorry.
So you guys are behind, I'm trying to think of this right here now. Star Avenue, you guys are close to Star, and it's the road that goes out to the right that's behind everything on University. And by the way, I love your neighborhood. There's not a lot of people that have driven back there to see it. I love it. And you guys have the horses that ride back there, and sometimes I see you guys riding on University and everything. It's fantastic. So I love that you guys have preserved that for so long and kept the charm of like the country feel within the city. And so that's one thing that I would like to say to you too, is looking through all of that in R3 as development keeps coming or whatever it is, consider the fact that we might have a neighborhood meeting to do a sweeping change in order to protect whatever it may be in your neighborhood. Okay, Thank you.
In addition, there's no sewer, city sewer
Correct.
located along John Richardson Road, so any new lots would have to be at least a half acre just to support a septic system.
Right.
And so the infrastructure, again, just restricts or limits.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that again? My hearing struck again.
Yes, so along that section of John Richardson Road, there's water lines, but there's no sewer lines. So any future development would have to be at least a half acre size in order to support a on-site septic system.
Or it
Thank you.
could be like what's going on with the first applicant on Park Street, where the city does bring the facilities out there. Because that's what happened at there, right?
Well, they're actually, the developer is extending all that infrastructure. So they're building the street, water, sewer, and they're building an on-site lift station. So all of that is being, now through that economic development agreement, there's shared cost
Right.
through that. But typically, if you didn't have that, then all that development cost would be borne by the developer.
Okay. I have no further questions. Anybody else? Comments?
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, Commissioner Forbes, you can make a motion.
That's good. I forget who's in charge.
That's all right.
I'll make a motion that we approve a zone change to R2 or R1, whatever they prefer, but R2 is less restrictive, right?
Well, it's more restrictive than the R3. So, yes, ma'am.
But not as restrictive as R1.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, does anybody second that?
Are you talking about just this one little part here that's outlined in yellow?
Yes, ma'am.
The ag.
The ag and the B2.
Right here.
Is outlined in yellow.
Both of
Here,
them.
I'll go back and show you on the screen.
Yeah, my motion is for both.
But
of them.
not the rest of it?
No, not the rest of
No.
it, because.
We
that's
can't do
not-
that. This is the one that's an agenda item.
But we will visit with the applicant about changing that once, after the meeting.
And explain to me why that's not spot zoning?
Well, it is consistent with the development pattern in the area. It's actually on the ground versus the zoning. And so spot zoning is essentially when you take a piece of property and you treat it differently than the surrounding properties, strictly for the benefit of that individual property owner. In this case, it's, changing it to R3 or R2 would be more beneficial than what's there today because B2 allows for a lot of different things.
Oh, sure.
In ag, it's an acre, but really when you look at agricultural zoning, it's minimum 2 acre because they're meant to be large lot, kind of estate development patterns. And so based on our discussion, I think that R2 could be considered not spot zoning just because it is more compatible and consistent with at least the development pattern in the area, even if there's no R1 or R2 in the immediate vicinity.
And also the land use for this lot, which is currently B2 and ag, is not really consistent with what's going on there because there's 2 residences there. So it's kind of bringing the zoning up to what's existing and not turning it into a future potential nightmare. Anyway, that's my opinion. Anyway.
Do you have a question on this, actually, Elena? In changing the ag to what Commissioner Forbes has stated, what about, ordinances pertaining to herd animals or, equines and?
So in the city, you're allowed to, even in your R1 and R2, you're allowed to keep livestock or chickens, but it's based on your lot size.
Right.
And so the larger the lot, the more animals you can have. And then,
Right.
and then there are setbacks from streets and other properties. So the configuration of the lot actually limits how many animals you can have on the property. So if it was ag or R2 or R3, the same provisions would apply. It would be based on lot size and how far away it is from other homes and in the street.
Okay. Y'all do understand that? Okay. Sounds good. All right. Commissioner Forbes made a motion to approve the zone change to R2. Does anybody second? Okay. Yeah, I can second. I was like, nobody, huh? Well, I will second that, and then we will take a vote. All in favor for it, say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Sorry, say nay. All right, motion carries.
Did you vote as well?
Yes.
Okay. just making
Yep.
sure.
So motion carries to change it.
Sorry, are you abstaining?
No, I'm not abstaining. I voted.
No,
She said voted. She voted.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Motion carries with all those in favor from changing B2 and Ag to R2 and not R3.
And
All
the
right.
family understands that and is okay with that? Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate you guys coming tonight.
Yes,
Thank you all for coming.
We hope you guys participate with the city more often.
And this item is scheduled to go to city council next week, so we'll
Yep,
take it next week.
it'll go to city council. Y'all don't have to leave if you want more entertainment. All right, now we're gonna move on to, item number 6. Elena,
Yeah, so city council approved the amendments to the zoning ordinance that we presented to you last time for inclusion of craft distillery into the zoning ordinance. And so that was the only planning and zoning item that was heard at that city council meeting.
okay, thank you very much, Elena. All right. Anybody have any questions for Elena on that?
I'm just curious about the update on presenting that zoning presentation, the cluster zoning to the city council.
I don't have an update for you on that. I did want to let you guys know that I'd like to have a workshop in June with you guys about student housing and code enforcement and rental property in general, because we're seeing more and more of that, and people trying to turn single-family homes into essentially boarding homes. And so I'm going to be sending you guys some information on that, and I was hoping in June we could have a workshop on that, because it's going to be a light agenda. So far, we have a specific use permit, and that's the only item on that agenda.
So that meeting would be, I'm sorry, what date, excuse me?
In June, the second Monday. I don't have my calendar. Let me look at my calendar, and I'll tell you.
So we're on to item 7 for discussions for future agenda items.
Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, I
It's all
jumped
right.
ahead.
Maybe she can look it up on the meeting, sorry, Amy?
Yeah.
What is the
So
date of the
it'll be June
meeting?
12th.
June 12th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, can I attend by Zoom?
You sure can. As long as we have a physical quorum, then you can attend remotely. So we just need 3 people physically here, and then we can do that.
I will be vacationing.
Oh,
Very good.
I'll be flying back that day, but I won't be home yet. 'cause-
okay.
Elena, did you want to talk a little bit about the pass and all the zoning things that you sent to us in terms of information?
Yes, so if you guys want staff to provide a presentation on any of those materials, just let us know. Because I know last time, we talked about doing a presentation, but then the direction was, well, send us the information, and then we'll let you know if we want to have additional discussion amongst yourselves about those different topics that I sent you.
When
So,
did you send this?
The information that I sent about the,
Form zone?
yes, ma'am.
Floodplains and,
Floodplains and form-based code.
I'm sorry, when did you send it?
I sent it a few weeks ago.
Tuesday,
A week ago?
May 2nd.
What, was it a week?
Tuesday, May 2nd.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
I couldn't
It's a
remember
week ago.
offhand.
Thank you for sending that. It was a lot of information.
Yes, sorry it took me a while to get that to you guys, but I wanted to make sure, there's a lot of information out there, so I was trying to select the things that I thought were most current, could be easily digested, and then provide resources for more in-depth reading on those.
Yeah, it's a lot of reading.
It is,
I can't say that I've gotten to all of it.
yeah, the attachments are really more like shorter synopsis of those items, so and they're easier to, read. So I would start with those before you dive into the full-blown PAS reports that I referenced in the email.
So if you guys get to it and would like to have a workshop on it, we can let Elena know.
Definitely want a workshop on that.
Okay. And is everybody good with June 12th and being a workshop date? Okay, perfect.
All right.
All right.
We'll get those materials to you.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Okay, we will adjourn. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lily.